Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Al-Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. Today's podcast is a follow-up from the previous one about narcissistic Muslim preachers and teachers. In this one, I'm going to be speaking about problematic Ruqyah practitioners, who they are, what they do, and why they need to be avoided. This is a heavy subject, and there is a ton to get through. So I have no idea how long this one's going to be, but do try and listen to it to the end because it will include so much information that is so important for you to know. And as always, please do like the podcast. If you find it helpful, do share it with others whom you feel could benefit from this information, and do subscribe to the channel or sign up to the newsletter on the website to be notified of future podcast releases. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, you can find a link below to my website, or you can email me directly. So without further ado, let's jump into the subject. And I'm going to start by explaining to you what Ruqyah is and what it's for. And I will do this via a hadith that was narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, who said, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طب حتى إنه ليخيل إليه قد صنع الشيء وما صنعه وإنه دعا ربه ثم قال أشعرت أن الله قد أفتاني فيما استفتيته فيه. So Aisha radiallahu anha said that the Prophet ﷺ was affected by black magic, so much so that he used to think that he had done something himself to make him ill, when in fact he did not do. So he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a cure, for a remedy. And one day he said to her, "Oh Aisha, do you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has advised me in regards to the illness I have consulted him about?" فقالت عائشة فما ذاك يا رسول الله؟ قال جاءني رجلان فجلس أحدهما عند رأسي والآخر عند رجلي فقال أحدهما لصاحبه ما وجع الرجل؟ قال مطبوب. قال من طبه؟ قال لبيد بن الأعصم. So Aisha radiallahu anha said, "So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advise you? What did he tell you?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Two men came to me, and one of them sat at my head and the other at my feet. And one of them asked his companion, 'What is wrong with this man?' The other replied, 'He is under the effect of black magic.' The other asked, 'Who has done this magic on him?' And the man replied, 'Labid ibn al-Asam.' This man was a Jew who really hated the Prophet ﷺ, and the magic that was done on him was to actually kill him, because the Prophet ﷺ fell very sick after this magic was done. And so the hadith continues. قال في ماذا؟ قال في مشط ومشاطة وجف طلعة. قال فأين هو؟ قال في ذروان وذروان بئر في بني زريق. So one of the men said, "With what did he work the magic?" The other replied, "With a comb and the hair of the Prophet ﷺ that was stuck to the comb, and the skin of pollen of a date palm tree." So the other man asked, "And where is that?" So the other said, "It is in Dharwan." Dharwan is a well in the dwelling place of the tribe of Bani Zurayq. And like I said, this was a Jewish tribe. فقالت عائشة فأتاها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم رجع إلى عائشة فقال والله لكأن ماءها نقاعة الحناء ولكأن نخلها رؤوس الشياطين. فقالت فأتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأخبرها عن البئر فقلت يا رسول الله فهل أخرجته؟ قال أما أنا فقد شفاني الله وكرهت أن أثير على الناس شرا. So Aisha radiallahu anha said that the Prophet ﷺ went to that well, and he returned to Aisha saying, "By Allah, the water of the well was as red as henna, and their date palm trees look like the heads of devils. And then Aisha radiallahu anha asked him, why didn't you take out the skin of pollen? He said, as for me, Allah has cured me, and I hated to draw the attention of the people to such an evil act, which they might learn and harm others with. So this hadith is in Bukhari, and according to a narration of Imam al-Thalabi and also Ibn Kathir, it was said that it was Jibreel alayhi salam who was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to undo the knots that had been made from the Prophet alayhi salam's hair in the comb. So when they found the well, the Prophet alayhi salam hid in it, and Jibreel was doing his healing work on the comb. And it was a Jewish boy who was serving the Prophet ﷺ who stole the comb and took it to Labib. And Labib tied 11 knots from the hair and enclosed it all in a skin of pollen of a date palm tree and buried it under a stone in the well. So the Ruqyah, the vision that the Prophet ﷺ received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, informed him of where this was hidden so he could undo the knots. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the two surahs, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, consisting of 11 verses. So when the Prophet ﷺ recited a verse from these two surahs, a knot opened. And upon the recitation of both surahs, the magic was destroyed. And the Prophet immediately felt relief and he went back to good health. So this is the foundation of Ruqyah. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Falaq, in verse 4 and 5, وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. Ya Allah, I seek refuge in you from النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ, from the evil of those witches, the magicians who cast spells by blowing into knots. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, and from the evil of the envious people when they envy. Remember when I told you before that the difference between jealousy and envy is that the jealous person wants what you have, but they don't want it taken from you. They just want it for themselves too. And the envious person is the one who sees that you have a lot of good and they want it for themselves and they want it taken from you. They don't want you to have it. They want it all for themselves. So the envious person is on the same level as the magician who does black magic on people. And Allah specifically mentions these types of people in Surah Al-Falaq because everyone, every believer has to seek refuge from all these evil people, the magicians and the envious. Because the envious are the ones who usually do turn to magic later to take something from you. Okay, no one, and I'm telling you no one, is envied more than empathic people and prophets and people who, they do a lot of good. The satanic mission of the envious is to take away the good that you do so that other people don't benefit. And that's why prophets were targeted. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was envied more than anyone we could ever think of. And remember, the Jews envied him as well because he didn't come from their bloodline. How could a prophet not be a Jew? How could the final prophet not be a Jew? So they envied him for being the chosen one. They envied him for being so loved by Allah. They envied him for having Jibreel as a friend and for having such a huge influence on people, to the point where the most unlikely people to convert to Islam and become believers became believers because of his influence. And they also envied him for his powers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him miracles like splitting the moon. They ridiculed him, they called him a magician, they called him all sorts of names and things because they couldn't believe that this simple man who grew up as an orphan superseded, kings of tribes and so on and became a prophet. They hated it. They hated that he married the best and wealthiest woman in Arabia. Do you know how many men competed and fought to marry Khadija radiallahu anha because of her high status? And in the end, he was the one who married her. He also was very handsome and he also looked half his age. he didn't age like other people did. So by the time he was in his 50s, he still looked very young. He had his fitness, he had his health, and everyone found that remarkable. And it's one of the traits of an empath, by the way, that they never age like other people. Narcissists always look older than their age, and empaths always look younger than their age. So for all of these reasons, the Prophet ﷺ was envied a lot. And because of this, Jibreel ﷺ always read over him. Aisha radiallahu anha said, كان إذا اشتكى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رقاه جبريل قال بسم الله يبريك ومن كل داء يشفيك ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد وشر كل ذي عين. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted by something, whether it be magic, evil eye, envy, jealousy, Jibreel ﷺ would make dua and say, in the name of Allah, may He cure you, may He heal you from every ailment, from the evil of the envious when they envy, and from the evil of every eye. This hadith is found in Sahih Muslim. So what we learn from this is that whenever you're afflicted with something that you don't know the root cause of, for example, you suddenly fall ill, you suddenly have a lot of fatigue, or you suddenly experience symptoms you've never had before, like very bad pains in your chest, or even sudden bleeding, then the first thing you have to do is make dua. Okay, you make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cures you of whatever it is you have, especially if you go to the doctors and the doctors are like, no idea, I have no idea what this is. When doctors can't find a reason or a cause for your illness, it's usually ayn, hasad, or sihr. It's one of the three. So it's either black magic or envy from an envious person, or it's a lovely dose of evil eye from someone. Okay, sometimes that evil eye can be unintentional. They forget to say mashallah, they forget to say Allahumma barik, and they'll hit you with something. Okay, and sometimes you can fall ill after receiving that dark energy. It's energy you can't see. If you were to see the energy that's emitted from people, you would be more on point with your adkhar. And because you can't see it, you don't know where it comes from. So you have to always make sure that you are on point with your morning adkhar and your evening adkhar. I've attached a PDF link to the adkhar in the description box below. You can download it. Read it every day, morning and night. Because you are receiving and being hit by lots of dark energy that could be the cause of all the illnesses you have that you don't know the root cause of. And the more you elevate in your nafs, the more you will feel energy. Okay, so you will start to feel where bad energy comes from, who it comes from, and naturally you will withdraw from, the company of certain people. You will isolate more. You will be very careful with who you spend time with, because you will feel dark energy from people the more your nafs elevates. But if you're not working on elevating your nafs, you'll never know where it hits you from. You won't know. You may keep the company of people who are secretly very envious of you, who are secretly doing black magic on you. Because you're not working on yourself, and you're not spending some time alone, and you're not reading your adkhar, you are putting yourself in danger by being around people who are constantly throwing bad energy at you. And you might go for Ruqyah. You might go and do all sorts of things. You might play Surah Al-Baqarah all day, every day. But because you're in the company of these people day in and day out, you're not helping yourself to resolve the issues that you have that are spiritual. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives spiritual gifts to those who elevate their nafs. And if you don't work on elevating your nafs, you won't receive those spiritual gifts. Okay, and that's a heightened intuition that I'll go into more later. So, reading your adkhar and remembering Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, Al-Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, your Ayat Al-Kursi, these are really important to be able to fight off dark energies every single day, because you'll get them every day. You might see strangers, people on the street. You might have people at home, your siblings, your spouses, your aunties, your uncles, your neighbours, even your closest friends sometimes. They'll be hitting you with such dark energy without you knowing. So the adkhar will protect you from ilm al-ghayb, from the unknown, the unseen, the things that you are not aware of. So if you are not doing what you need to do to protect yourself from the known and the unknown, you only have yourself to blame when you are afflicted by illnesses and other issues, because you're letting them in. You're not closing the gate. Did you know that even the jinn can envy you? So let's say you're all good with the people. Okay, you're good with humans. You get jinn who can envy you too. They envy you for the life you have. They envy you for being a human. They envy you for being a believer. The jinn can envy you too. So the adkhar will protect you from shayateen al-ins and shayateen al-jinn, and also accidental ayn that you can give yourself, and the accidental ayn that can come from other people. Some people honestly don't intend to give you a bad eye or anything like that. It's just that they may be in a very dark place at the time. And let's say, for example, you have a baby shower and they've been trying to get pregnant for a long time. They are happy for you, but because they're in such a bad place, because they can't get pregnant, they can't have a child, they're starting to question why you have it and not them. It's not because they don't want you to have it. They are wondering why you have it and they don't, especially if they're more practicing and if they feel more deserving of it perhaps. So if someone's mental health is not good, then they can unintentionally send you the evil eye. And the effect can be as bad as the intentional evil eye. And if you achieve something for yourself, let's say, for example, you buy yourself a house. Okay, you're a first-time homeowner and you're jumping up and down and you're super glad that you've managed to buy this house, and you don't say MashaAllah, you can actually sabotage your rizq because you didn't say MashaAllah, that this is from Allah. This is not because of me, this has come from Allah. You give yourself ayn and you lose the house. Or something happens to the house, you get mold, you get rats, everything starts going wrong with the house because you've given yourself an evil eye. Ibn al-Qayyim actually explains this very well, and he explains how sometimes we can become our own worst enemies when we believe that we don't have to protect ourselves from our own nafs. And people can become very boastful and arrogant, and you have this haughty sense of self, which is like, I did this all by myself, and you forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that this is His rizq for you. It's not because you've managed to achieve it all by yourself, it's because this is the rizq that's been written. So when you don't remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, then you can afflict yourself with the evil eye. I won't go too deep into this subject because I've already taken a deep dive into it in podcast 90 and 91. But I'd just like you to be aware that these are the steps you need to take for Ruqyah. Okay, this is the most basic Ruqyah you can do. There are loads of additional things that you can do as well in accordance to your case. Everyone's case is different, but this is the best way of doing it. So step 1, you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And step 2, you read your adkhar with full conviction that it's going to work, because the power of Allah is more powerful than any magician and any ayn and any envious person. So this deep trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really needed for the adkhar to work properly. And then step 3 is that you remove yourself from the company of people whom you're suspicious of in regards to them sending you bad energy. And you also stop sins. Okay, try your best to cut out all your major sins, at the very least. If you are committing major sins, in order for this ruqyah to work, you have to cut them out. People who do ruqyah on themselves and continue with their major sins never see any improvement in their health. Nothing changes in their spiritual state, so if they have a jinn, it's still there, doesn't go away. And if they have health problems, they get worse. Because the belief in the power of adkhar isn't there, and you haven't stopped the major sins because you're too lazy or too weak. So you think, you know what? I've got these jinn problems. I can't sleep. I've got insomnia. I'm having nightmares. I'm sick all the time. I can't put on weight. I can't lose weight. I've got heavy bleeding. I've got very bad digestive issues. I've got respiratory issues. I can't get up for salah. I can't do any of these things. But I'm not willing to stop watching pornography. I'm not willing to stop staying up all night and play video games and let Fajr pass. I'm not willing to stop smoking. I'm not willing to try to improve my own health and my own life. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to a Ruqyah practitioner. Maybe they can help me because I'm not strong enough in my nafs. I don't have the willpower to help myself and discipline myself to do what's needed to improve my life. And I'm not sincere in my adkhar, so the easiest thing to do would be to go to a raqi. And a raqi is also known as an exorcist or a spiritual doctor. And there are both men and women who do this. So they claim that they can remove a jinn from you. So if you're possessed by jinn or you have a jinn sent to you via black magic, then they say that they can remove this jinn and they can remove evil eye from you too. And some can even claim that they can cure you from all the symptoms of evil eye, envy, or black magic. So these are considered to be huge claims. And before I dive into the 4 categories of people who are Ruqyah practitioners, I would like to visit a hadith that will set the stage for the rest of the podcast. It's a very, very important hadith that is narrated in Bukhari that will inshallah clear a lot of confusion on the matter. So Sahal ibn Sa'ad radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا يدخلن من أمتي 70,000 أو 700,000 لا يدخل أولهم حتى يدخل آخرهم وجوههم على صورة القمر ليلة البدر. So the Prophet ﷺ said, verily 70,000 or 700,000 of my followers from my ummah will enter paradise altogether with no reckoning. And the first and the last among them will enter at the same time. And their faces will be glowing like the bright full moon. So when the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba this and the Sahabiyat, they all wanted to know, how can we be among those who go straight to Al-Firdaus al-A'la without any accounting, which means there are no questions in the grave. There are no horrors to see on the Day of Judgment. There's no anxiety to feel in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're waiting for your account. You just go straight there. It's a fast track. They wanted to know. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ replied to them and said, هم الذين لا يتطيرون ولا يسترقون ولا يكتوون وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. He said, these are the people who do not believe in omens, and they do not seek people for ruqyah, and they do not get their bodies branded, and they have full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are omens? So back in those days, and until now I see people do it, they used to release birds for good luck. So if they were to release them in certain areas, it means that good luck is guaranteed to come. And you can apply this as well to things like believing in horoscopes. You read a horoscope for your star sign and it says next week you're going to come into a lot of money and you believe it. This is an omen. So if you get involved in these kinds of practices, then you're not considered to be from among the 70,000 or the 700,000. Scholars differed on the number. The second part is وَلَا يَسْتَرْقُونَ. Yastarqun means that you don't seek people for ruqyah because it's already been taught to you how to do it on yourself. Okay, I will give you the exception to the rule later for this because there will be some people who are so badly afflicted by jinn that they can't even do ruqyah on themselves. There's an exception here for those people. They can ask, but for your average person who can do their own ruqyah, if you go to a raqi because you're too lazy to do the ruqyah on yourself, or maybe you don't have the knowledge of how to do ruqyah, then you will fall out of the 70,000 or the 700,000, because this is fundamental knowledge in the Quran, and it's found in the shortest of surahs. Okay, this is why it's important to understand what the Quran means. We have, Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Nas, Surah Al-Falaq. This is where we have the knowledge of ruqyah. So there's no excuse to be going to other people to seek ruqyah when Allah has taught us how to do it ourselves, and the Prophet ﷺ taught us in the Sunnah how to do it ourselves. So people who ignore their own powers of ruqyah and they don't make that sincere dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help them, and they decide to rely on other people to cure them and heal them and expel the jinn from them, you now fall into a type of shirk. Okay, because you haven't taken the steps that I mentioned earlier, which are sincere dua to Allah and reading the adkhar with conviction. And, doing what you can to clear your environment from bad energy, evil people, major sins and so on. You'll only be helped if you do those three. If you don't do those three and you go straight to a raqi, you've committed a type of shirk. And some people might say, well, I've done all those 3 steps and I still have my problem. I still have the jinn. I still don't feel well. There's something that you're not doing properly with sincerity in those 3 steps. I've never known someone to do them sincerely and not be cured. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills that the treatment is delayed, there is khair in it for you. Okay, it's qadar Allah. It's your trial. Be patient with it. As long as you know that you're doing the 3 steps sincerely and in the best way you can, the cure is coming and you're going to have ajr, lots of reward for your patience. You don't need to go running off to a raqi who will sit and do ruqyah on you because you've lost patience or you've lost hope. As long as you know you're doing the steps correctly, then continue with that. Okay, it will become bearable over time. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delays the treatment so you can be among these people who go to paradise without any accounting. Okay, so bear with it until you get to a stage where you really do need someone else's help. Okay, but until then, as long as it's bearable, as long as you can manage it, stick with it. Keep that self-discipline and always have that goal to be among those people who will enter Jannah without hisab. Have that as your intention when you're fighting a spiritual issue while you are working on yourself, because if you're not, believe me when I tell you, the spiritual issue will get worse, much worse, because the jinn who is there is believing now that he is more powerful than you because you're not even doing anything to fight it. So it believes you're weak. So he keeps pushing boundaries until it gets worse and worse and worse, until you get to the stage where a raqi is needed. And you would have lost so much reward by working on yourself, and you would have avoided even reaching that horrible stage. Okay, so don't waste golden nuggets by being lazy when you know you have a jinn issue. Take the steps necessary to fight it. You have to fight it. You can't just leave it. These jinn always challenge you, and they will always overpower you when they see that you're weak. They love it. They love to see that you're naive to your own powers, because self-ruqyah is more powerful than anyone else doing it for you. Even if he is the best raqi in the world, did you know that his ruqyah on you is less powerful than the ruqyah you do on yourself? Because you are fighting your inner demon. And that takes a lot of strength. And when I say inner demon, I mean the one that's possessed you. Okay, not your qareen. Ruqyah will never get rid of your qareen, by the way. It only silences it. It only tames it. It helps you to have control over it. It will never get rid of your qareen, but it can get rid of other external jinn, like the ashiq jinn, like the jinn sent to you via black magic, like a jinn that's transferred to you from someone else, like a jinn who's out to take revenge on you. There are lots of different jinns that can jump to you and possess you or accompany you, and Ruqyah gets rid of them completely, but not your qareen. Your qareen is with you until you die. And I will speak more about this later, inshallah. So let's just go to the last part of the hadith, which is وَلَا يَكْتَوُونَ. وَلَا يَكْتَوُونَ means they do not engage in cauterization. And cauterization is a medical procedure that involves burning body tissue to remove or close off a part of it. Like, for example, if you have a wound, people used to use a burning method to seal the wound, and it used to leave ugly scars all over the body. This is haram, because your body is an amana. It's a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't want you to ruin it and destroy it. Okay, you've got to look after this body that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. But back in those days, people used to go to these medical practitioners who used to burn their bodies to seal wounds and so on. The equivalent of that now would be unnecessary beauty treatments and surgeries, because a lot of these surgeries can go wrong and they leave horrific scars behind, and they leave you with even more problems, like wounds that keep opening that are infected, and you've got dangerous chemicals being pumped into your bodies and all of that. And you've also got tattoos. Tattoos, when you do them, you're injecting poison into your blood. And that's why it's forbidden for Muslims to do tattoos. Because if you think about it, you could never donate blood if you have even a tiny tattoo, which means there is poison in the blood. So you could actually prevent someone from getting life-saving blood just because you've decided to get tattoos on your body. So imagine the rewards that you have given up because you decided to do something that's bad for your body. So there's always a reason why, Allah forbids us from doing certain things. It's not to stop us having fun or to stop us looking beautiful. It's because the harm is greater than the good. And even if you've done those three things, okay, let's say you've engaged in these three things that the Prophet ﷺ warned us about, and we did them during times of ignorance. Maybe we did them before converting to Islam. Maybe, we did these things thinking that they were okay at the time. If you repent, then you still have a chance of being among the people who have been promised paradise with no account. Because when you repent and you make the intention to not go back to a sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipes your slate clean, and you have a chance of being among those people, because this time you are going to be aware of what you're doing. Okay, so it's different. So don't panic, it's all good. I'm just letting you know that going to a Ruqyah practitioner is not something that's encouraged in Islam. And this hadith makes it very clear that Ruqyah should never be a business. Okay? So if the Prophet ﷺ is saying that the people who do not go to Ruqyah practitioners are the ones who are going to be saved from accounting, then it's evidence that Ruqyah practitioners should not be doing this as a business. And there are many reasons for this as well. One of them is they know that if the people are not doing the inner work needed to improve, then these people will keep coming to them, and the shaitan will get to them and tell them, well, this is great business. You can keep taking money from them, and they're not going to do the inner work, and the jinn's not going to go away. So that's how it usually turns into a long-term business. So let's jump into the 4 categories of Ruqyah practitioners and how they differ from one another. So first of all, you have the empath. And the empath, raqi, is the one who never takes any money for what he does or what she does. And they merely offer voluntarily their services to help someone in need, someone who's very sick. And this is the right way of doing Ruqyah. So for example, you might have someone in the family, or a family friend, or a neighbour, or someone who's heard that someone is very sick, and they will offer to come and perform Ruqyah on this sick person. And the best people who do Ruqyah are the empaths, because they have control over their qareen. If you do not have control over your qareen, you're going to get manipulated by your qareen in ruqyah because you're dealing with other jinns. And if your qareen has control over you, your qareen will make it worse for the afflicted person because he is dealing with their entities. But when an empath who has control over their qareen performs the ruqyah, the other jinn are silenced, and sometimes the jinn will actually speak through the body of the person who is afflicted out of fear and also out of respect for the raqi. Okay, so it's very difficult for someone narcissistic to achieve this. And usually the jinn who has possessed the person will tell the raqi who did the magic, where the magic is buried, where it's hidden, and so on. And it does it by force because the raqi is using the right Quran verses and the right dua. And the raqi also fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to a high degree. So the jinn has no other option but to be truthful about what it's doing there. So here it's very important to understand that when you are a high level empath and you're giving ruqyah to someone, you're more likely to achieve a good result than if you're not. Especially when the person who is afflicted can't do their own ruqyah. So you get some people who can't even get out of bed. They are so unwell, they can't even move their tongue because the possession is that bad. They can't move their heads, they can't get up to pray, they can't wash for wudu. So here it's good for people to volunteer to do ruqyah. And I say volunteer because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel alayhi salam, it was a response to the dua that the Prophet alayhi salam made. So he asked for Allah's help and Allah sent him Jibreel. There's a hadith narrated by Salama radiallahu anha who said that the Prophet alayhi salam saw a servant girl in her house whose face had become very discoloured. So the Prophet alayhi salam said, استرق لها فإن بها النظرة. Treat her with protective recitations as she has been afflicted by an evil eye. So the Prophet ﷺ is showing us that it's okay for people to tell each other or advise each other to go and read ruqyah on someone who is unwell, but you can't ask for it. Okay? So if you are the sick person and you are able to do your own ruqyah, you shouldn't ask anyone to do ruqyah for you. It should come voluntarily from others. That's when the ruqyah becomes effective for you. If you ask for it, it's not effective. And you lose out on those blessings that I mentioned earlier in the hadith about the 70,000 or the 700,000 people. So it's known that many empaths have spiritual gifts where they can perform ruqyah on someone and they can speak to the jinn who has possessed the person. A person who does this has a very high level of spirituality and they have a very high level of control over their nafs and their qareen. And remember here, in this situation, they're not doing anything wrong by conversing with the jinn. It's the jinn who converses with them because they're being very irritated by the ruqyah. So it starts to speak out. And so the raqi takes advantage of this to find out why the jinn is there. Now other empaths may not have this ability to converse with the jinn during ruqyah, and it usually doesn't affect those who have no fear of the jinn. But if empaths do have a fear of the jinn, their limit will only be to read over you. So they can read, they can make you feel better. The jinn might actually leave without you knowing. Okay, so the empath who is reading for you voluntarily might have enough power to make the jinn leave. If the person is very, very sick. Okay, if you're not doing your own ruqyah. And if the jinn doesn't leave, then the symptoms will get a lot better when you're being read over by an empathic person. So that's the best type of ruqyah you can receive, but it only works when you don't ask for it. Okay, I'll say it again. It's really important that you make note of this. So if you are an empathic person and you know people who are sick, it is a sadaqah for you to go and do that for someone. Okay, go and read over someone in the family, your neighbour, a friend. You'll get a lot of reward for that because your nafs is so high in elevation that it scares the jinn. So you might actually help someone to recover from their possession when you see this and treat it as a sadaqah. And don't fear the jinn that person has. The jinn is absolutely terrified of you as an empath. Terrified. So there's nothing to fear. You don't have to worry about the jinn, jumping onto you. Just make sure before you read on anyone, before you do any ruqyah, before you read any Quran, that you protect yourself with adkhar. Just in case the jinn retaliates. Okay, the jinn will get annoyed with you reciting Quran and trying to help this person. It's now an extra force to drive them out. So they're not going to like it. So they may not jump onto you, but they might emit dark energy to you. Before you perform ruqyah on anyone or any creature, even if it's your pet cat, read adkhar first and then do it. Just so that you have a barrier between you and the entity that person has been possessed by. Even if it's just ayatul kursi, just make sure you read it to protect yourself from any negative energy that can come from the jinn, who will be very distressed by you and your presence. The second category of people who perform ruqyah are the empathic people who do it for a living. And what will happen here is that these people will get super drained, okay, because it's not something that you should actually have as a career. And the reason for that, the main reason, is because you're dealing with so many people's entities all day, every day. So if you have, say, 5 clients a day, and each one has jinn possession, and they're possessed by the evil types of jinn, then you're the one who's going to get attacked. And this can come in different forms. You can either get attacked in your health, you can get attacked in your spirit, you can get attacked in your energy, so you'll feel so tired, so drained, because you are taking on the jinns of so many people. It's not something people sign up for. And it's not something the Sahaba ever did. And what will happen is over time, all of these jinns can actually break you down until your spiritual and protective barriers come down, and you will start to be affected by the entities of other people. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen where people's families start to get affected as well, because the jinns are after you. Okay, they're on a mission to get revenge from you, and they have to break you down and overwhelm you to the point where you can no longer handle it. And when your barrier comes down, that's when you start to get so many nightmares, so many problems happening in your life, so many issues in your family life, in your home, with your kids, because you've taken on so much that no one has asked you to. The Prophet ﷺ didn't ask you to do that. No one asked you to do that. So you'll always see ruqyah practitioners who are nice, they're good people, very tired, very drained, they're fed up of life, and they're struggling. They're really struggling, but it's something that they feel they have to do as a service because they have a gift of being able to do ruqyah on people and expel jinn. So they feel like they have this moral obligation to keep going because it's helping people, with their issues. But who are the people who are suffering the most? It's them. It's always them. And you get some, mashallah, who are very resilient to, jinn attacks, and they can deal with them well. And you get some who can't. And after a while, they become very depressed because they can't handle it. I spoke to someone who used to be a ruqyah practitioner, and he said 3 of his children died because the jinn came after him. And they got angry with him because he expelled them from the bodies of the people they possessed, and they took revenge via the children. So we had 3 children who died in infancy, and they told him it was us. So, these things can lead you into a very deep depression. You can lose your iman. This man became very suicidal, and this is why it's not meant to be a career. It's not meant to be something that you take on. because it's hard enough dealing with your own qareen and the qareens of all your family members, let alone taking on all the external jinns of so many people you don't know either. Okay, you are taking that on upon yourself and potentially destroying your life in the process. Now, the third type of Ruqyah practitioner is the narcissistic one. And this raqi is out for money, business and power. And these types of people dress up to make themselves look religious and pious. Okay, so that you trust them. And they will claim to be able to expel jinns from you and to heal you and all that kind of stuff. But they're scammers. Okay, these people are scammers because their level of nafs is very low and they are already controlled by an evil jinn, which is their qareen. Okay, they're already controlled because they're narcissists. And they're not believers to begin with, and they're not religious. Okay, they are cultural Muslims who use the mask of being religious to their benefit. It helps them to sell their services and they charge a lot. So they will show you in their videos that they're using Quran verses and that they're using a Hadith and that they're using Zamzam and black seed and olive oil and this and that. But the belief isn't in them to begin with. So it's crucial that a raqi, because they're dealing with evil jinn, it's crucial that they have a very high level of piety and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you don't, and you are controlled already by your evil qareen, then you are going to be controlled by all other jinn as well. And it's the waswas that they have, which is very severe by the way, that gets them to do weird and strange things in their ruqyah sessions. And sometimes they will offer their ruqyah services for free. So they want to look like good and pious people. So they say they do it fi sabilillah until they get you hooked. So they make you believe that they are doing an exorcism on you, but actually they're not. Because they don't have enough iman and piety or fear of Allah to be able to actually expel the jinn from the bodies of the people who are afflicted, because the jinns that have occupied the bodies of these people know who these people are and they have no respect for them. So they won't be conversing with them in a good way to let them know what's happened to this person. They will converse with the raqi and make deals with him. Okay? Now, when the raqi gets trapped because of his low iman, he starts doing very strange things that go against Islam. So, for example, he will offer services for free for people. They come, and then the deal that he has with the jinn is that the jinn will make it look like his services are efficient, that the jinn has gone away. So the person goes home, they're really happy, the symptoms have gone, the jinn is gone, and then the jinn returns after a month or after 6 weeks. And then they go back to the raqi and they say, the jinn's back, I'm having the same symptoms. The raqi's like, oh, I can't continue doing this for free. If you would like to continue with my services, I charge £500, £400. But now you're willing to pay it because you've seen firsthand that the raqi can actually get rid of the jinn. So now you become addicted to going to a ruqyah practitioner and he's taking advantage of you. The jinn has gone nowhere. It's just the deal he's made with the jinn. And they start talking to the jinn through their minds. They start to see things. They start to become very haunted because the jinn now have a deal with this guy. And this guy doesn't know how to get out of the deal because he is already controlled by his qareen, and his qareen has roped in the jinns of other people to keep him in a very low state that is very detrimental to his iman. Many of them exit the fold of Islam while being in this state of mind and in this field of work. So now he owes the jinn for making him look so powerful. Right now, loads of people are coming to him because people are saying to their friends and their family members, I went to this guy and my jinn has gone. I went to this guy and my symptoms have disappeared. So these people get a lot of business. and they love it. Not only are they getting rich, they are also getting a lot of power, because people see them as powerful people to be able to expel very evil jinns from the bodies of people. So they're admired and they're looked at in awe, like, wow, this guy, he's like amazing. This guy is so powerful, he can expel any jinn. And it gets to his head, it gets to his ego. Like I said, women can do this too. And what eventually happens is he becomes a slave to all the jinns whom he now owes a lot to. And what he has to do in return for this power and this business are things that are un-Islamic. For example, he might ask you for money that's an extra to the fee you've already paid to sacrifice, like a sheep or a goat or a cow, and he says it's for your treatment. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can be pleased with the work he's done and out of gratitude for your treatment, when actually it's being sacrificed for Iblis. Because this is something you can do yourself. Why are you giving him money to do it? You go and do it yourself with the right intention, instead of giving it to someone who is going to sacrifice it for a satanic jinn. And if they don't ask you to do that, or if they see that you can't afford to do that, they will ask you to do something else which is similar, and that is to put out specific types of food and leave the food uncovered all night. So for example, these could be bones and eggs and honey, like a random selection of things that humans don't really eat together, but you have to put them together in a bowl, leave it uncovered, because this is food for the evil jinn. And another thing they might do is they will be happy to see women alone. Okay, so if you go to a raqi and he shuts the door and it's just you and him, he's narcissistic. There's no way he can be an empath. He will take advantage of you. He will say things like, remove all your clothes. This is the only way I can do the ruqyah. He might put his hands on your body parts, especially the private areas, and he will use the excuse that this is what is needed in ruqyah. It's a part of the process. If you're super naive, you'll believe it. There are so many women who believe this. And the raqi gets them to lie down on like a massage bed, and he's doing whatever he wants in the name of ruqyah. And if he's not doing it to adult women, he's doing it to teenage girls or children. Okay, sometimes the raqi will say, no one can be in the room. I need your child with me alone so that the ruqyah can be effective. If you come into the room, you might get the jinn. You might catch this. You might get that. They scare you into not being in the room with your children so that he has all the freedom in the world to molest them and sexually harass them in any way he pleases. This is all behavior that is owed to the jinn in return for all the power they are giving him. They turn him into this paedophilic, disgusting, vile creature of a man or a woman. When I say man, I mean woman too, okay? And these are the kind of people that they have to become in order to continue in this field of work. So you'll usually notice that these people are sleazy, greasy, slimy. There's something really off with this person, but because he's got such a great reputation for ruqyah, and because he's come recommended, you go to him and you're like, well, okay, if this is what it's going to take for me to get rid of my jinn issue, then I'm willing to do whatever. You're willing to be groped and harassed and sexually abused and everything. Some women are raped during ruqyah sessions because the raqi is telling them this is the only way the ashiq jinn will leave their body. I'm telling you, I've heard crazy things. And a lot of people will comply because the raqi knows how desperate they are to get rid of the jinn. And sometimes the raqi will scare them and say things like, if you don't get rid of this jinn, he's going to do this to you in the future or that to you in the future. You'll never get married. You'll never have a good life. You're going to die as a kafira or as a kafir. So they scare people into compliance with what it is that they want them to do. and they scare people into paying a lot more as well. So you're actually in a scam, okay? They continue asking you for so much money. I know people have paid thousands, and they've been going to the same raqi for years and years, and nothing's changed. The jinn keeps coming back. But they've now entered a trauma bond with the raqi, because the raqi is giving them what they need. They give them that fix, that hit of relief for a month or two from the jinn, and then it comes back, and then they enter the same trauma bond cycle. But believe me when I tell you, these people are tormented. They are tormented by the jinn. They are tormented if the jinn are not happy with their sacrifices. They're tormented if the jinn are not happy with their behavior. You didn't do enough today to please us. You didn't do enough disgusting, vile things to make us happy. Tomorrow, you owe us double. That's what they do. And they get nightmares all the time about it. They never rest. And I'll give you some of the physical signs of these people that you'll be able to notice, so that you can just be aware of these, because it's really dangerous that you go to them. You will end up with more jinn issues and more spiritual problems than you started out having, because you went to the wrong people for ruqyah. And this is why there is a stern warning from the Prophet ﷺ about visiting ruqyah practitioners, because he knows that there are going to be loads of people who will come out from the woodwork after his death claiming to be raqis and spiritual doctors and so on. He knows this. So he wanted to cut it short and say that those who go to ruqyah practitioners are not going to be from the special group of people. It's to scare you into not going there as well. So the raqis are scaring you into believing that you need them to get rid of your jinn. And the Prophet ﷺ is scaring you to not visit them out of his love for you. He doesn't want you to go to ruqyah practitioners in case they are corrupt, in case they give you more problems, in case they are having deals made with your qareen that will give you even more waswas. So many people, they get worse after they visit a raqi. And this is why in Islam, the most powerful ruqyah you can do is the ruqyah on yourself. Always remember that the Prophet ﷺ knew that there would be so many people who come after him claiming to be prophets and claiming to be pious people and saints, and even the Mahdi, people are claiming that they are, the awaited Mahdi and the end of times. And he knew that so many of these people would come out, and he worried about his ummah. So when he told us to not do something, it's to protect us from all this garbage. So some signs of these narcissistic ruqyah practitioners are that, first and foremost, they're very unattractive. They have faces you would not want to wake up to in the middle of the night in the dark. I promise you that. And they always look older than they really are. Their unattractiveness comes from the state of their heart. And you know what? They don't see it. They actually see themselves as being attractive. And that's why they're always coming out in videos. They're always recording themselves speaking. And they bring the camera up close, and you're thinking, Akhi, what the hell is wrong with you? MashaAllah, more people need this level of confidence. I mean, sometimes they get so close, you can even see their nose hair from how unflattering the angle is. And notice as well, they always have a poker face. And sometimes you'll see that smirk come out. And they're always into polygamy. Okay, these guys are very big on having more than one wife. And they're always telling women, stop DMing me and stop sending me marriage proposals. You're swamping me in marriage proposals. For the life of me, I'll never understand what type of women are begging these men for marriage who look like that. It's beyond me. I can only put it down to them having spiritual issues as well. I can't find any other explanation for it. Because there is nothing, and I mean nothing, appealing about these types of men. So you have to have some evil entity in you to be drawn to these narcissistic men who deal with evil jinn, and they've got their own afflictions and possessions, and you can see it, right? So They have the confidence to attract people, but this confidence is based on their own arrogance because they believe they're powerful by being Ruqyah practitioners. But you'll notice that they have no nur on their face. There's no light. They have very dark faces and they always look stressed. People who are doing Allah's work have nur on their faces. And people love to look at them because they emit beauty and lots of positive energy. And you know these people brag a lot about what they have and what they do on social media as well. So they'll come out and they will brag about all the money they've accumulated and the Lamborghinis they've bought and the Porsches they've bought and the house they live in because they've made so much money from their Ruqyah business. And they forget themselves. They truly forget what they're doing because they are oblivious to it. Allah has blinded them. So they expose themselves, and people who are aware and alert will clock on to the materialistic obsession these people have with the dunya. And they're doing all this ruqyah work and all this spiritual healing work and whatnot, only for them to buy supercars and mansions and go on luxury holidays and things. Something doesn't add up here, but they'll always expose themselves. And this is the reward they get from the jinn. So the jinn give them all this money because of all the clients they're bringing in, and the jinn in return get to corrupt both the raqi and all his clients. So it's a win-win situation for them, and they get to corrupt people's iman and faith and push them into shirk. Okay, this is one of the main objectives of this type of ruqyah. You end up depending so much on the raqi that you forget about your reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these trials and hardships. And if the woman is a narcissistic ruqyah practitioner, more often than not she will be a niqabi, and they like to wear black, and they're also very unattractive and will look a lot older than they are. So if they're 30, they'll look 45. If they're 50, they'll look 65, and so on. And they tend to have a witchy look. It's a very uncomfortable look that they have, almost like the witches in Disney films. They do have that aura about them. And you'll notice also that the men and women have dark circles under their eyes because they have trouble sleeping. And they'll either be skinny or stocky. Okay, so it's usually one or the other. They're usually ungroomed. So men will usually have fuzzy beards that they don't even bother brushing. Their nails will be dirty and their feet will be dirty. And they usually have bad breath, bad teeth, and sometimes it's because they're on drugs. A lot of these ruqyah practitioners have to smoke something to be able to cope with all of these spiritual issues that they're accumulating because of the work they're doing. So you find that they're crack addicts, you find that they're on weed, you find that they're on cocaine. They will be smoking something to help them cope. You'll notice also that they don't have good body odor, and they also have sharp teeth. Not all of them, but some of them. The worst types will have very sharp canines, or they'll have other sharp teeth in their mouths. So it's something that you notice straight away. When they start talking and their mouths open, your blood will run cold because they're very vampire-like. These people also like the dark, and they also sound strange when they recite Quran. So it's not pleasant to listen to when they recite. And sometimes you can't even identify the words to figure out which surah or verse they are reading from in the Quran because it all sounds so strange. And another thing they do in the sessions that I just remembered is they might physically abuse you in the name of Ruqyah. So they might start to slap you, scream at you, shout at you, and it's to invoke fear. So when you're in a state of fear, your vibration drops, and that's how they get access to your jinn. And when your spiritual portal is open, other jinns are invited in because he needs to offload some of the jinns he has onto you. So when he lowers your vibration and gets you into a state of panic or fear, your portal is open for more to come in. And that's how he saves himself from having so many attached to him. You've got to be super careful. I'm telling you, more people come out of these sessions more disturbed, more possessed, and with more faith issues, because they keep asking, why does this ruqyah never work? We are using Quran, we are using Zamzam, we are using this and that, nothing's working. And that's how they lose their faith, and they lose hope in Allah, and they lose all trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to cure them from these spiritual problems. But what they're not understanding is that they keep going back to satanic people who are keeping them in a trauma bond. Now, I know that these people will be naive to this. Okay, I'm here to tell you that this is what's happening. It's not because Allah doesn't want to cure you. It doesn't mean that the ruqyah isn't working. The ruqyah will work, but you're seeking it from satanic people. So of course, treatment is going to get delayed. Of course, it's going to take a long time. You can't blame everything on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes it's ignorance that causes us to never get the treatment we need because we keep seeking help from the wrong people. This is shirk. Okay, I can't say it enough. A lot of people will fall into shirk without knowing, and this is the scary part of it. So I really hope that this podcast today, inshallah, will open your eyes to a lot of things that you might be doing that are incorrect and displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you can come to your own realization as to why all the ruqyah you've been doing for so many years hasn't been working. And sometimes the major sin that you need to remove for the ruqyah to work is to stop going to a raqi. I'm telling you, I've got clients who did this. They stopped going to the raqi. I taught them self-ruqyah, and they managed to heal themselves. And it's always possible because you are always going to be stronger than the jinn. You are stronger than Iblis himself, let alone the petty little qareen who has been assigned to you. So it all starts in your psyche. If your psyche is not programmed to believe that you are stronger than the jinn who has possessed you and the jinn who accompanies you, then you'll never be able to defeat the black magic that's been sent to you and the ayn and everything else that you are suffering from spiritually. You have to shift your mindset into believing and knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you to be more powerful than all of these spiritual entities, and that self-ruqyah will always work. And if you're really struggling with ruqyah, then just make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He sends you the cure, and that cure might come in the form of an empath coming to voluntarily read on you. Okay, so people will come into your life to do things for you because they are tasakhir Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this mission, the same way Jibreel alayhi salam was sent to serve the Prophet alayhi salam. So when you truly believe in the power of Allah and you're struggling to help yourself, you best believe that people will pop up in your life out of nowhere to help you. And it's not by coincidence. They will hear about your illness and have an urge to come and help you. And that urge is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's your rizq. It's the rizq that's being sent to you to help and cure and treat you. Now, the people in the fourth category of ruqyah practitioners are the narcissists and psychopaths who are magicians. Okay? So they say they are ruqyah practitioners, but they are actually magicians, and these are more common than you'd like to know. So they do everything that the people in category 3 do, but in this category, they know they're magicians and they set out to actually make deals with the jinn from the very beginning. Some people end up falling into this because they need to resort to magic to be able to cope with all of the jinn attacks they get. So they go to other people like sheikhs who are already magicians and dabble in that kind of stuff for help. And the sheikh says, well, I'll teach you magic. so that you can protect yourself from the jinn, and you can do spells for people, and this will make you powerful. So this is the partnership with the jinn that's completely forbidden. Okay, when you call upon evil jinn to help you and you pass it off as it being ruqyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Jinn, verse 6, وَأَنَّهُ كَانَ رِجَالٌ مِّنَ الْإِنسِ يَعُوذُونَ بِرِجَالٍ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَزَادُوهُمْ رَهَقًا. And some men used to seek refuge with the jinn, and they increased each other in wickedness. Okay, so when you partner with evil jinn to do magic or to do ruqyah or to do anything else, the evil jinn increase in wickedness, and the person, the human being, increases in wickedness as well, and they fall into shirk. And in Surah Taha, in verse 69, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَلْقِ مَا فِي يَمِينِكَ تَلْقَفْ مَا صَنَعُوا إِنَّمَا صَنَعُوا كَيْدُ سَاحِرٍ وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُ حَيْثُ أَتَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Musa alayhi salam to cast what is in his right hand, and it will swallow up what the magicians have made, for what they have made is no more than a magic trick, and the magicians can never succeed wherever they go. So you may have come across magicians who have done amazing things, but believe me when I tell you, every magic trick they do backfires on them, and every spell they cast backfires on them. Allah never allows their magic tricks to be permanent. They're always short term, and that's why they are always in need of business. They're always in need of people and victims and people that they need to practice magic on, because once they get sucked into that dark world, the jinn don't leave them alone. And sometimes a sahir will tell you that they use the good jinn to do ruqyah, or they use the good jinn to heal you and fix you and all of that, expel jinn. This is not true, and I'll tell you why. It's because the believing jinn will never form an alliance with humans. They listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on their side as well, they comply with the rule that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for them to not engage with us. So the only jinn that engage with magicians are the evil jinn. They are the only ones who transgress the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So does this mean the good jinn can never help humans? No. The good jinn will always help the believers, but not when they are asked to. Okay? So we go back to what the Prophet ﷺ said when he told us to not ask for ruqyah. Sometimes the good jinn see that we need to be rescued from the evil jinn, and they do it out of their own free will. There are many stories from Islamic history where this actually happened. And the one that comes to mind is the one that happened in the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, when a man got kidnapped by an evil jinn and a good jinn rescued him. So as long as you're not calling upon any jinn to rescue you or heal you or help you, they will help you out of their own free will. Okay? So sometimes things will happen in the unseen world, and we are saved from it because of the good jinn, because they are believers and they recognize us to be believers, so they help us. The only person in the history of mankind who could command the jinn with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. He was permitted to call upon the services of both the evil and the good jinn, and this gave him such power because he had the ability to communicate with even the animals. So his authority extended to every creature, from the ant to the beast. So this is what made Sulaiman alayhi salam so powerful, and this is why so many magicians aspire to be like him. However, this cannot be possible at all because of the dua that Sulaiman alayhi salam made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can be found in Surah Sad, verse 35, where he said, قال رب اغفر لي وهب لي ملكا لا ينبغي لأحد من بعدي إنك أنت الوهاب. My Lord, forgive me and grant me an authority that will never be matched by anyone after me. You are indeed the giver of all bounties. فسخرنا له الريح تجري بأمره رخاء حيث أصاب. So we subjected to him the wind, blowing gently at his command to wherever he pleased. وَالشَّيَاطِينَ كُلَّ بَنَّاءٍ وَغَوَّاصٍ. And we subjected to him every builder and diver from the evil jinn. وَآخَرِينَ مُقَرَّنِينَ فِي الْأَصْفَادِ. And other jinns bound together in chains. هَذَا عَطَاؤُنَا فَامْنُنْ أَوْ أَمْسِكْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah said, "This is our gift to you, so give or withhold as you wish, never to be called to account." وَإِنَّ لَهُ عِنْدَنَا لَزُلْفَى وَحُسْنَ مَآبٍ. And Sulaiman will indeed have a status of closeness to us and an honourable destination. So this is why Sulaiman ﷺ had the biggest kingdom of all the prophets, because he was given the gift of being able to communicate with all the creatures, and together they built the kingdom. And it was magnificent. And this is why so many magicians aspire to have the power of Sulaiman ﷺ, because it gives them the dunya. Okay, they can build palaces and they can have supernatural powers and they can do so much in this world that would make them rulers, and it would make them have authority over everyone else. And I won't get too much into this, but it's just to give you a quick idea of how it's implemented in this world. The people who rule the world, okay, if you look at the Freemason Bible and all of that, you will see that they derive their power from their partnerships with evil jinn. They help them to achieve this level of authority over everyone else in the world. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the magician never succeeds, because this isn't a gift that's been given to them by Allah. They are transgressing boundaries by consulting the evil jinn and bringing them into our world to help them have all this power and authority, and it's backfiring, and it will backfire heavily on them in the future. Now, when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, he wasn't given the authority to command the jinn, but he was able to handle them, and many of them served him out of their free will. So he had many followers. From the jinn who became believers, they converted to Islam, and they provided spiritual power in battles, and they assisted him in many other ways. They protected him in their own spiritual ways in the unseen world, and it was out of their own free will. And this is what made him powerful, because he had armies of the jinn who supported his mission. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give him authority over the jinn, because he wanted to keep his promise to Sulaiman alayhi salam, who made that special request. Okay? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also didn't give him the authority over the jinn to set a moral example. So he didn't want the Muslim believers to think that it was okay to form partnerships with the jinn, because the Prophet ﷺ was seen doing so. So we learn from the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ that the good jinn will always help us when we don't ask for their help, and that the evil jinn are the ones who deal with the magicians and, all other spiritual healers who claim to know things from the unseen and who claim to use the good jinn to do things for you. Like, for example, someone might say to you that they are a Ruqyah practitioner and they can do operations from far. Let's say you go to them because you've got cancer, or you've got an illness that you have no idea what the root cause of it is. And they're like, okay, give me your mother's name, give me your date of birth, give me a picture, give me some DNA, give me some hair, and I will do my work remotely. I can do a spiritual operation on you and cure the illness you have. So this person might be in India and you're in the UK, and they say, tonight I'm going to perform an operation on you, and by tomorrow morning you'll be cured from the disease. You think that's a spiritual power? Honey, they're using evil jinn. You have to pay them, you've got to sacrifice something, and the information you give them about yourself causes the jinn to stay with you. Okay, so they go and do this operation, that's, a spiritual thing, and you wake up in the morning and you feel better. You're like, actually, it worked. This person is very powerful. They have spiritual healing powers that no one else has, but they are magicians. And what he's done is he's sent an evil jinn into your body to figure out what the problem is. And the jinn says, I will do this for you, but in return, you've got to do something for me. And because he's an evil jinn, he will say something like, I want you to urinate on the Quran. I want you to molest a child. I want you to groom a woman. I want you to commit zina. And the magician does it. This is the deal they make with the shayateen. And in return, the shayateen will go and do all of these healing things that people see as being like extraordinary. Okay? Sometimes the raqi will say, I need you to drink water from this cup. And it's like a metal cup. And inside the bowl or the cup, there will be some writing. These are the names of the shayateen. And sometimes you might recognize that there are words from the Quran. They will add words to the verse to make it applicable to the shayateen. So instead of the verse being about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be about Iblis. And they will write it in a way that's hard to read, but you will believe that it's the Quran because they tell you it's the Quran. They might ask you to wear certain things like amulets. They might give you a necklace, a ring. They might give you like an item of clothing to wear. You have to be careful because the jinn are attached to these things. By the way, they always wear these big rings. You know, they have a stone on the ring. There's an evil jinn trapped in there. Okay, they have a partner, like a right-hand man, and he's trapped in that ring, or he's trapped in any jewelry that they wear. And if they ever ask you to wear that ring or to wear their necklace, you have now become stuck in that spiritual cycle with them. The jinn now has power over you. Never, ever, ever wear a ring that a raqi gives to you to wear. Because if you do, you become a slave to their jinn as well, and all of a sudden you start having loads of spiritual problems. Sometimes the raqi will say, if you wear this ring, from now on, you'll be protected from everything evil out there. And people are like skipping off. They're like, oh, he's given me a ring to wear. He's given me something to wear around my neck. There's magic in there. Okay, don't wear anything like this. The Prophet ﷺ, he warned us about amulets and omens and all of these things. And sometimes there's sihr in there for you to be attached to the raqi. Did you know that? Sometimes the raqi will fall in love with you and he puts a love spell in the ring or in the amulet for you to become obsessed with him. And sometimes he will do it to men as well. Sometimes he will be gay himself and he will take a fascination in a good-looking man who comes to him for ruqyah, and he puts a ashiq jinn in the ring or in the water or in whatever it is that he's asked you to drink or rub yourself with, like oil, and all of a sudden you become obsessed with the raqi. You can't keep away from him. It's because he's put a spell in the oil, in the water, for you. A lot of these ruqyah practitioners who are magicians are homosexual, secretly. And they do loads of like vile things with children and people of the same gender, and they can drug you in ruqyah sessions because they have to do certain things to please the evil jinn who are working for them and giving them all this power. So they try so hard to be like Sulaiman alayhi salam, but Sulaiman alayhi salam never had to commit acts of kufr and shirk to get the compliance of the evil jinn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 102, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ وما أنزل على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا إنما نحن فتنة فلا تكفر فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراه ما له في الآخرة من خلاق ولبئس ما شروا به أنفسهم لو كانوا يعلمون. Allah says that there were people who followed the magic that was promoted by the devils during the reign of Sulaiman alayhi salam. So after he passed away, the shayateen started to teach people about black magic. Never did Sulaiman disbelieve, rather it was the devils who disbelieved. They taught magic to the people along with what had been revealed to the two angels Harut and Marut in Babylon. The two angels never taught anyone without saying to them, "We are only a test for you, so do not abandon your faith with magic." Yet people learned the magic that caused a rift even between husband and wife, although their magic could not harm anyone except by Allah's will. They learned what harmed them and did not benefit them, although they already knew that whoever buys into magic would have no share in the hereafter. Miserable indeed was the price for which they sold their souls, if only they knew. So anyone who gets into black magic is a worshipper of Iblis. You have definitely committed kufr and you are no longer considered to be a Muslim. And it's because of all the damage black magic can cause people. So who are these people and where do they come from? The answer is they come from the sects that the Prophet ﷺ said would be from the hellfire. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, وَتَفْتَرِقُ أُمَّتِي عَلَى 73 فِرْقَةٍ. So the ummah will be split into 73 sects and only one will be saved. 72 sects will be in the hellfire. And there are 3 reasons for this. The first one is that their aqidah is wrong, so they do not follow the authentic teachings of the Quran and Sunnah and the 4 schools of thought, and they also work with the jinn and they have practices in magic. Now I just want to make it clear, a lot of people believe that the 4 schools of thought are sects. They are not. I want you to imagine the best university in the world, let's say Harvard or Cambridge. The 4 schools of thought are like 4 campuses of Harvard or 4 campuses of Cambridge. So the teachings are all correct, but the people apply the teachings differently in accordance to the culture they live in. So the people who follow the teachings of the university in China are going to be different from those who follow the teachings in India. But what's happened is that ignorant people perceive them to be sects. So there are social wars between people who follow different schools of thought. And you hear it all the time when people have debates and arguments in Muslim communities and they want to make a point. So they say ridiculous things like, "I am right because I am Hanafi," and all you're thinking is, who on earth taught you Islam? What circus clown taught you Islam and told you to say that you are Maliki or Shafi'i or Hanafi? You know, a school of thought is just a university. You say to people, "I follow the Maliki school of thought." You don't become a Maliki or a Hanafi or a Salafi or, you're a Muslim at the end of the day. But people have turned them into sects. And there are wars between people who follow different schools of thought. This is complete and utter ignorance, and it's embarrassing. Especially when these arguments are happening between men in their 50s and 60s and so on. And this is why we have so much corruption in our Muslim communities, because it's all about social politics. The real sects are those that have a different aqidah. For example, I'll give you Shia Islam. It's different from Sunni Islam because many Shia scholars do not accept or take any narrations from the Sahaba. So the only authentic Hadith narrations they will accept are those from Ahl al-Bayt, those who are blood relatives of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is why they didn't accept the Khilafah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, because he wasn't a blood relative of the Prophet. And they believe that Ali radiallahu anhu should have been next in line. However, Islamic principles dictate that the next in line to leadership should be the one who is the most competent for the job, not the one who is a blood relative. Because the blood relative may not be ready or competent enough to handle the responsibilities of leadership. So the Shia have a huge gap in Islamic education because they don't accept the Hadith narrations from the Sahaba, so they filled it in with their own understanding of Islam, and that's what makes their aqidah different from Sunni Islam. In Saudi, there are different courts for the Shia Saudis because the rulings are different. There's a city called Qatif, and it's for Shia. So if a woman wants to get a divorce, if she wants to go and apply for her inheritance rights, or if there's anything that they need to go to court for, they can't go to a Sunni court because their aqidah is different. They have to go to their courts in Qatif to sort out their matters. So I just wanted to make it clear what a sect is. And it's the same in Sufism, by the way. There are different levels of Sufism, and the highest level of Sufism is actually a cult. And this cult exits the fold of Islam because the practices within it are very satanic. And this brings me on to my next point as to where so many of these magicians learn about magic. So if you follow a sect that has a different aqidah, you are more likely to fall into this type of ruqyah and these types of satanic spiritual practices out of hope that you would get your spiritual issues resolved, okay? Sometimes you'll go into it in ignorance, and sometimes you will know that it is magic, okay? There are loads of ignorant people out there who get roped into these practices because they are under false promises of being healed. But if you get involved with these people, your spiritual issues and problems in general will increase. So the Sufi sect that deals with magic is known by the way they treat their sheikh, okay? If they treat their sheikh like a prophet and they claim that this sheikh has spiritual powers, he can heal people, he's so pious, he's so close to Allah, that he's the middleman between you and Allah, and that if he approves of you and your behavior, then it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your dua because you've pleased the sheikh. If you're in a cult like that, you're dealing with people who are involved in magic. Some of the worst people I've come across in my life, and believe me, I've dealt with a lot of people, have been these Sufi sheikhs. And they are people who want to be put on a pedestal and admired and almost worshipped. And they have strange worship rituals as well, where they get their group members to visit graveyards of saints and people who are considered to be spiritual healers and powerful people. And they ask for money so they can buy livestock to sacrifice for these saints who have passed away. These sacrifices are satanic. Okay, you're not meant to be doing this. And you'll find that these Sufi cults are very secretive. So they don't want you telling other people what goes on within these groups. And it's because they know that you are so naive, and if you were to tell other people, a red flag would be raised because this is not Islam. Okay, what they're asking you to do, the worship rituals and so on, are more satanic than anything else. So what these sheikhs will claim to do is have these super spiritual powers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted them with, and they talk about out-of-body experiences. So they can tell you things like, I've travelled all over the world in my sleep, I can heal this person on the other side of the world, I have the ability to speak with angels, I have the ability to speak with, all these spirits, and people aspire to reach that level, okay? People want to reach that spiritual level. They're like, wow, I'd love to transcend and enter that spiritual world where I can heal and I can become so powerful and I can become a Sufi sheikh. How do I do it? And he says to them, if you want to transcend and receive this gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is pretty much the gift of prophethood that they're claiming, then you need to repeat La ilaha illallah 10,000 times or 20,000 times in one night. So people go and they try this and they can't, obviously, right? It's really hard. So they come back to the sheikh and they say, it wasn't possible. I fell asleep. I got too tired. There's no way I can, say La ilaha illallah 10,000 or 20,000 times in a night. He said, okay, no worries. I'll give you an easy way to do this. And he tells them a secret, which is, if you keep repeating hu, then it will compensate for you not being able to say La ilaha illallah. It's the short version of La ilaha illallah. So just sit in meditation and repeat hu, 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 until you reach 10,000 or 20,000. And shall I tell you what that does? It calls upon the shayateen. Okay, hu is not a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a name of Iblis. So when you keep repeating this in dhikr, you are channeling so much negative energy so that you open your portal to be possessed by the shayateen. And that's how the Sufi sheikh gets you in his trap. Because I want you to think about something. When you go to a dhikr meeting, okay, and you see people sat in a circle and they're repeating dhikr until they pass out or until they start acting strangely, tell me, is that something the Prophet ﷺ would have told us or taught us to do? Absolutely not. I was presenting a paper once in Eastern Europe and I met a Sufi lady at the conference and she invited me to a dhikr gathering that evening. So I thought, okay, it would be interesting to go and see what it's like, because the lowest level of Sufism is beautiful, okay? The lowest level of Sufism, it gets you to meet other people who are like-minded and you sit and you do dhikr together, you pray together, you read Quran together. That is wonderful. That kind of collective spirituality is absolutely fine in Islam. But when it becomes a cult, that's when it becomes problematic. So I thought it was just going to be a beautiful gathering of Sufis doing dhikr. And I get there and I'm seeing loads of people in this hall and there's a sheikh sat in the middle on a very high chair and he's got this massive stone ring on and he's dressed like a king. So everyone is sitting around him in a really big circle and they asked me to join, so I'm like, okay, I'll join. And after, all the introductory talks and speeches and all of that, they started the dhikr. So it's the usual La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Ya Latif, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, all of that. And then it just started to get really weird. And it was getting very intense, very fast. People started passing out. People's eyes were rolling out of their heads. People were, falling forwards, falling backwards, screaming, crying. I'm like, what in the Harry Potter is this? So I took a step back. I was feeling really overwhelmed and I went and sat on a chair and the Sufi sheikh had his eyes on me the whole time. Like, why did you exit the ring? So I'm feeling really uncomfortable by this point and I'm like, no, they just look like possessed people. And now I understand that they were getting possessed because the type of dhikr they were doing was actually calling upon the shayateen. So when you're in a dhikr gathering and people start acting very strangely and it's uncomfortable, there is jinn possession happening there because the energy you are channeling from all the chanting is bringing them in. And I say this because when you are reciting dhikr, they do it fast so that the words start meaning something else. So they might be saying Alhamdulillah on repeat, but it sounds like something else because they're doing it so quickly. And this channels the shayateen to come in because it's not normal to feel so exhausted after doing dhikr. It's not meant to be like this. Anyway, so he comes and asks me why did you leave the ring? And I said to him, I just feel unwell. It's just very overwhelming for me. He said, okay. He was very suspicious of me. Anyway, they had another ritual that they did outside in this courtyard where they had a bonfire, and they started to throw things in the bonfire and they did a dance around it. And I was thinking, okay, this is definitely a cult. I need to get back to the hotel. And just as I was collecting my things, I saw them put long, thin rods into the fire and they started piercing their necks with them. They were piercing rods through their necks, through their wrists and through their ears. And I thought, yep, this is definitely magic. I need to get out of here as soon as possible. And I just knew that this was jinn work, because you can't pierce your body with sharp rods like that without it killing you. So this is magic and illusions from the jinn to make everyone there believe that these sheikhs and these people who have these spiritual powers are, pious and guided, and they are gifted with a spiritual power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I quickly gathered my things and I went to the hotel, and I literally just lay there thinking, what on earth happened tonight? But it was something that I needed to see to be able to understand it properly. And, I've met Sufis who have told me that they have these out-of-body spiritual experiences and they're healers. They can help people, heal from cancer, and they can see angels and they can see all of these things. And it's because they do this chanting on the regular and they think it's from Allah when it's actually from Iblis. And every single one of them has narcissism. So they're all coverts, they're all wolves in sheep's clothing, and they hate empaths with a passion. You know why? Because high-level empaths actually have a spiritual gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they cannot transcend to. So they always look for empathic people to drag into their circles. They steal their light like vampires, and then they throw them to the dogs. So they are always on the prowl for empaths to join these Sufi circles because they feed off their energy. They are predators who are looking for fresh meat, and empaths are their prime target. So if you are naive, if you're sweet, if you're very innocent, you are going to be their prime target. They groom you and get you into these Sufi circles until they brainwash you into believing that what they're doing is correct. And you lose your iman in the process because they're doing things that completely go against the teachings of our Prophet ﷺ. So they're very envious of empaths because the Sufi sheikh, who is very satanic, knows that you can only transcend to that level when you are a high-level empath and you have complete control over your qareen. You don't need to learn magic to get there. So when they see empaths reach that level and they can't do it, they have to resort to magic and the shayateen to do it. They are on a mission to bring you down. So they always target good people to join their cults. Your energy is food for them. They steal it. And they steal it when they get your spiritual portal open. So when they ask you to join the ring of dhikr and you open your portal up for the shayateen to come in, that's when they steal your light. And that's when you become addicted to the Sufi gatherings. And it's like you're in a trance. It's like you've been completely hypnotized by their teachings and by what they're doing, and you defend them with a passion. You're like, no, they're doing the right thing, and these are pious people, and they follow the teachings of Rasulullah, and you defend them to the bitter end. It's because you've been brainwashed. I hate to say it, but you've been brainwashed because you're naive to what they're doing, and you will feel terrified to leave. Okay, people might tell you that you need to leave this cult, you need to exit this group, and you're terrified to leave, and you're not sure why. Why am I so scared to leave? You feel a sense of loyalty to them. It's not you, it's the jinn. You are trauma bonded to the jinn that has now been assigned to you because you are a member of this cult. And many people who eventually do escape the Sufi cult leave Islam altogether because of how traumatizing the the whole experience was. And if you do escape, they either try to reel you back in or they'll hate you for it. Okay, they will treat you with such cruelty, and yeah, you'll get bullied if you escape. I have a client who used to be a magician, and he said to me that he never knew that what he was getting involved in was magic because he was brainwashed by the sheikhs. He used to be a highly empathic person, and he really wanted to be a raqi to help people with their spiritual problems. So people advised him to get trained by these sheikhs. He said that with time, the spells that I was doing were backfiring on me. So I would go back to the sheikh and tell him that I'm having nightmares, I can't sleep, the jinn are attacking me. So the sheikh would do favours for him. He would say, look, if you do this for me, I'll protect you from the jinn. So he started getting roped into, very immoral practices for the sheikh in return for the protection. And he said, one day I fell out with the sheikh. We had an argument and he withheld his protection services. And he said, I have been bombarded with attacks from not one, not two, but thousands of jinn. They are all after me because I owe them. I'm indebted to them now for everything that they have done for me, because the sheikh has put his hands up and said, he's not my responsibility anymore. Go to him for the debt. وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُ حَيْثُ أَتَى. And the magician will never succeed no matter what they do. Okay, it backfires on them. Believe me, these evil jinn are nasty when they come for their debts. They are nasty. You think that they're going to let you go easily? No. They're going to ruin every aspect of your life. They're going to ruin your iman, your future, your present. They will damage everything in your life because they believe you owe them a lot for the magic and the spells that they have done for you. So some people here get desperate and they go and beg the Sufi sheikh to relieve them from all of these attacks. And the sheikh says, okay, fine, I will do it if you do this for me and that for me. So he starts to get you doing his dirty work. He gets you to start, molesting children and so on and so forth. And that's why you find so many so-called religious people who do these things. Like, why would you molest children? What obsession do you have with children? What obsession do you have with women and pornography and all these vile acts, right? They're unhygienic people. They love disgusting, dirty things. Why? It's because they are dealing with evil jinn. So a lot of these Ruqyah practitioners who are psychopathic and they claim to be healers are from this cult. You'll also get some from the Salafi cults that are satanic. They are also involved in very heavy black magic. And the people who do the magic are seen in the mosque. I mean, she could be your auntie and she covers from head to toe. She fasts Ramadan, she prays all her five. She's always talking about Allah and the Rasul, alayhi salatu salam, but she does black magic on people and she claims to be Salafi. This is the cult I'm talking about. There is a satanic cult of Salafism that people belong to that causes a lot of confusion because they come across as being very strict Salafi and they come across as being very pious and all of that and knowing the deen, but these are the people who are doing black magic on everyone else. And we have a serious epidemic of this in our Muslim communities. There are so many satanic, vile, demonic women who keep doing black magic on their family members, on their friends, on their relatives, on their neighbours, and just people they hate in general. And you've got to be really careful. Wallah, you've got to be so careful because this is so common right now. People are doing it without having any fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These people are not believers, they're not even Muslim. Okay? A sahir can never be Muslim. So you've got to be careful because a lot of people are confusing Islam with this satanic behaviour, and it's really sad for me to see how much black magic is so common in our communities. Every other day I speak to a client who tells me, my auntie did black magic on me, my sister did it, my mum did it, my dad did it, my friend did it. What the hell is going on? What sick societies do we live in? It's become more and more acceptable in Muslim communities to do this to each other because it's the easiest way to take revenge on others. If you go to a magician, you've exited the fold of Islam. Imran ibn Hussein radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, ليس منا من تطير أو تطير له أو تكهن أو تكهن له أو سحر أو سحر له. He is not one of us who reads omens or has them read for him, or who performs soothsaying or has it performed for him, or who practices black magic or has it practiced for him. And this magic can be any kind of magic, okay? You might think it's good magic, but all magic is bad magic. So the Prophet ﷺ says here that anyone who goes to a soothsayer is not one of us either. So a soothsayer is someone who, for example, they read your palm, or they read a teacup for you to tell you your future, or they read your horoscope, or they are tarot card readers, okay, who say, well, you know, in the future this is going to happen to you, you're going to meet someone who will marry you next year, you're going to meet someone who's going to give you a lot of money, and you go there believing it. Even if you don't believe it, the fact that you've gone there is a problem. And sometimes you'll find that what they say actually does come true, and the reason for that is because their qareen is simply communicating with yours, so your qareen knows what you're thinking, and it passes this information back to the soothsayer, who can give you a general idea of what's to come because of what you're thinking about and what you desire. Okay, so for example, you might really want to get married. Your qareen tells their qareen this, and they'll say something like, in the future you're going to meet this amazing person, and you get excited and you want to hear more, and that's how the addiction develops, to going to people who read your palm and read your horoscope, because they will mix truth with falsehood, and that's what evil jinn do. So sometimes you think, how on earth did they find out or know all this information about me? They might say to you, to gain your trust, that when you were 6, this happened to you, didn't it? And you're like, yep, that's what happened to me. And they'll say, your mother passed away last year, didn't she? You're like, oh my goodness, yes. And you had a miscarriage 2 years ago, didn't you? They're like, oh my God, this person is blessed from Allah. How on earth did you know all this information about me? The simple answer is that they know how to tap into your qareen. Your qareen snitches on you. So they ask your qareen for information about you. The qareen tells their qareen, they hear it in their head and they convey it to you. So now they've got your trust. Okay? Now they've got your trust, they can tell you whatever they want because you trust everything that they're going to tell you about your future. So they mess with your mental health when they give you lies about what's going to happen in the future. Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's not. And you wait eagerly for things to come true and they don't. You get disappointed, you keep going back to these readers who tell you the same thing over and over again, or they might change the reality of things to suit what you want because it keeps you addicted to them. And if you hear something that you don't like, so for example, you're going to experience a death in the family in the next 2 years, you're going to live the next 2 years in complete paranoia. It's going to mess with your mental health. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you go to these soothsayers and people who tell the future and you believe in it, you're finished. It's haram because they mess with your mental health. They will feed you a lot of lies to keep you in a low vibration of feeling anxious and depressed and paranoid, because you're now worried about the future when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken that burden from us. He hasn't asked us to worry about the future. He asked us to leave the future in His hands. So whatever's to come is qadar Allah. It's already written. Don't go to people who are going to tell you your future only for you to be worried about it, because they've gained your trust by revealing information that is true about you only because they can communicate with your qareen. Aisha radiallahu anha reported that people asked the Prophet ﷺ about visiting soothsayers and fortune tellers, and he said, "Laysu bishay," they are upon nothing. So they said, "Ya Rasulallah, فإنهم يحدثون أحيانا الشيء يكون حقا." O Messenger of Allah, sometimes they do speak about things that come true. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: تلك الكلمة من الجن يحفظها الجن فيقرها في أذن وليه قر الدجاجة فيخلطون فيها أكثر من 100 كذبة. Those are the words snatched by the jinn who whisper into the ears of their shayateen al-ins friends, and it is mixed with more than 100 lies. And Aisha radiallahu anha also reported that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, من أتى عرافا فسأله عن شيء لم يقبل له صلاة 40 ليلة. Whoever goes to a soothsayer and asks them about something and believes them, their prayer will not be accepted for 40 nights. And scholars say that just visiting a soothsayer, whether you believe them or not, is also included in this. So avoid these people, avoid people who clearly speak to your qareen and they know information that they couldn't have known from, anywhere else otherwise. You've got to be careful. A lot of these people mess with your head because they give you information about yourself that you've never told them, and you find it very difficult to understand where on earth they would have got that information from. It's from your qareen. That's why you have to always read your adkhar. Did you know that when you read your adkhar, your qareen won't snitch on you because it can't, it's chained? So a magician will try to access information from your qareen, but because of your adkhar, your qareen has been silenced. And this is a trait of high-level empaths. And magicians actually become so obsessed with empaths because they can never access their qareen. And the high-level empaths are those who have full tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm not talking about the empathic codependents who sometimes forget to read their adkhar and, they become susceptible to these manipulations. No, if you're a high-level empath, your intuition will alert you when something is off. You will feel when someone's a magician. You will feel when someone deals with the jinn, and you'll be quick with your adkhar, you'll be quick with that protection, and they can't access you, and it drives them nuts. Because you have the light and energy that they need to feed off so badly. It's luxury for them to have it, but they can't access it, and it drives them wild. Because you have what they want the most, but they can't access it because of your adkhar. I'm telling you, you don't know how powerful your adkhar are until you become afflicted with one of their evil spirits. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you to be afflicted by black magic or an evil spirit because you are very careless about your salah and your adkhar. So you'll find that many people who are affected by black magic either have bad character, they are not consistent in their salah, they're not consistent with their adkhar, they have very low iman and very low trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things leave a door open for black magic to affect you. So if Allah allows it to come to you, then there's a lesson in there for you. So get the treatment that you need by doing your self-ruqyah and learn to close that gate. Okay, you will always see that there's something that you're doing that's allowed that black magic to come in, and sometimes it's a major sin that you're committing as well. Okay, I get that question a lot. I pray and I do all of these things. Why did Allah allow me to be affected by black magic? Well, let me have a look at what you're doing. Are you consistent with your salah? Yes. What are the things that you're doing that could be sabotaging your protection? And then you find out that she goes to tarot card readers, or she's involved in a Sufi cult, and her, guards are down spiritually and so on. So there will always be something that Allah wants to alert you to so that you can be protected from black magic the next time or any other spiritual problem. It's never a punishment unless you are a magician. Okay, when black magic is returned to sender and it backfires on you, that's a punishment when you are the magician. But if you are not the magician and you're not doing black magic on anyone, it's never a punishment when you get afflicted with a spiritual problem. There is a lesson in there for you because you've left a door open for shayateen to come into your spiritual energy and your world. So no matter how bad things get in your life, no matter how much someone hurts you or breaks your heart, never ever resort to black magic to take revenge on them. Leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will deal with it in a much better way than you ever could. People often go to magicians for one of two reasons. It's sarf or atf. Sarf is when they want something to be taken away from someone, like their health or their marriage or their children and so on. Or atf, when they want to bring something to you and ruin your life in that way as well for their benefit. So for example, they might want to make someone obsessed with them. They might want to make someone love them so much. So this person may not want to marry them or have rejected them, but they're adamant on marrying this particular person. So they go to a magician to bring this person to them. And sometimes the magic is to repel people. So for example, I want to split this couple up. I'm jealous. I don't like the fact that they got married. I want you to split them up. So it's either to pull apart or bring together. So you will know that he or she is a magician when they start asking you for things that have your DNA or the DNA of the people who you want to do the magic on. So they may ask you for things like nail clippings, period pads, sperm, hair, just weird, disgusting things like that. And the magician will mix it with like dust or water, oil, things like that, and create a spell. So he will tie knots in the hair and he will tie everything together with thread, and then he will ask you to either bury it somewhere or throw it in the sea, or he will dispose of it as he wills. And this is a huge problem because in order to undo the magic, you need to find this thing that they've created, and it's really hard to. And a way to find out where the magic is buried or where it's been thrown or hidden is to read Surah Al-Baqarah for 7 days straight. Okay? And you'll have a dream. And this dream will come to you before Fajr, and you'll see a vision of who did the magic to you and where it's been hidden or thrown. There are loads of people who have been advised this by shuyukh in Saudi who do Ruqyah, and loads of people have found out where to find the sihr and how to destroy it. I used to hear this on the Saudi Ruqyah channels, and it used to fascinate me how they would, access information from the people who are possessed, and sometimes the jinn would talk and tell the raqi where the sihr has been buried. And thinking about it now, I do find it strange how Ruqyah practitioners were allowed to have channels, knowing that it's actually forbidden for people to go to Ruqyah practitioners. But some people who used to come on the calls would say that I can't read Quran, I can't do Ruqyah on myself, so maybe that's why. But one of the things I remember that they were advised to do, if the raqi couldn't get access to speaking to the jinn, is to read Surah Al-Baqarah for 7 days or listen to it for 7 days and then note down any dreams that they have, and it will reveal who did it and where it is. So anyone who asks you to bring strange things, even items of clothing that are dirty, so they might say, make sure the person has sweat in the clothing. Don't bring clean clothing. They must have, taken it off and sweated in it and then bring it to me and so on. It's just weird. These are magicians. And they will offer to do things for you like, I can make this person your slave. Do you want me to make this person go crazy? Do you want me to make them lose their hair? Do you want me to make them, be unable to walk? They can do anything with the help of the jinn. And the more complex the sihr is, the higher the price. So you could be paying thousands for this magic, and you could be bound to this magician, and you may end up doing sexual favours for this raqi because of how complex the sihr is. And he has to negotiate with the jinn. I need you to do this black magic for me to give this person cancer. And the jinn will say, okay, well, this is what I want in return. And it could be something huge. He might say to the raqi, I need you to sleep with the woman. And if you do that, I'll get the sihr done for you. So it's dirty. It's a disgusting, dark, life that you never want to get involved in. Because you could be the one who suffers from the wrath of a raqi when he doesn't get what he wants from you, because now the jinn are asking for what they are owed. And sometimes when you're in the presence of someone who is possessed and they are super angry, their jinn can transfer to you. And sometimes your ruqyah that you do on yourself is not accepted because you have anger problems. And every time you're angry, you lower your vibration, and again, you open your portal for the evil jinn. So how on earth are you going to expel the jinn with ruqyah if you get angry regularly? Don't be around people who are angry. And if you have jinn possession, you need to tame your anger. Because no matter how much ruqyah you do on yourself, if you are an angry person, it's not going to work. You need to raise your vibration so that you can elevate your nafs. The more you get angry and the more you are a slave to your emotions, whenever you're upset and so on, you're just going to invite more bad energy in. So when you start making deals with magicians, they can push you into anger to pass on some of their jinn onto you, or they will project all their anger onto you because they're so under pressure from the jinn. And that's why magicians work together, because they have to find ways to protect each other from the evil jinn, okay? You've got to be careful when one of these people gives you something to drink in particular. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Sometimes they will tell you to drink ruqyah water that they have read on. If they are a magician, this is sihr that you're drinking. And if you go to a magician asking for a spell and they give it to you in water, they tell you to put it in the food of the person who you want black magic done on, and this will backfire on you and your health. And this is why lots of people, when they do black magic on others, they put it in their food or in their drink, because the magician has told them that the words that I have, read over this sihr will cause whatever you want done to the person. So usually when you drink sihr, you become very ill, and sometimes you can lose your iman, sometimes you can start going crazy, you have very bad waswas, you can become a drug addict from how bad the waswas is. It might stop you from getting married. It depends. There are loads of different types of jinn that can get sent to you from things you drink and eat and so on. So if you suspect that someone in the family or a friend is very envious of you, be very careful, when taking food and drink from them. And that's why it's best to cleanse your environment, and that's why I name it as the third step. If you have suspicions that someone is envious, it's best to avoid that person altogether, or as much as you possibly can if they are in your family. And if you can't avoid eating and drinking from what they prepare, then at least read your adkhar before you eat. And if you are experiencing symptoms of sihr in different parts of your body, so for example, let's say you get very bad chest pain, just put your hand on your chest and repeat, Allahumma abtal as-sihr min sadri, Allahumma dammir as-sihr fi sadri. So, Ya Allah, destroy the sihr that I feel in my heart or in my chest. Keep repeating it when you do your ruqyah, okay? When you read your Quran, your adkhar, just put your hand on wherever the pain is or wherever the issue is or wherever you feel the jinn is in your body. Sometimes you can feel the jinn moving in your knees. Sometimes the jinn is in your back, in your chest, in your stomach. You'll feel it if you have black magic. Just put your hand there and just keep saying, Allahumma dammir as-sihr fi batni, fi sadri. Destroy it in my chest, in my heart, in my knees and so on. And you can get rid of it yourself. You can expel an evil spirit yourself. And another treatment that helps is hijama. So book hijama appointments. This also removes evil spirits from your body but you have to read adkhar before you get your hijama done, because the jinn hate the hijama treatment. And if you don't read your adkhar, they can actually attack you in your dreams, and that's why people have so many bad nightmares after hijama. So make sure you read your adkhar before any appointment. And don't go to have hijama with anyone whom you feel is not an empath. Okay, because sometimes magicians do hijama as well. So ask yourself, how do you feel being in the presence of this person? And try to avoid having a male hijama therapist if you are a woman. Okay, try and avoid it as much as possible. The hijama therapist should always be someone you're comfortable with, and it should be clear that they are a devout believer. So usually they will have like Surah Al-Baqarah playing in the background while they do their treatment, and if they don't, ask them if they can do that. Okay, so wow, heavy subject today, but I've covered pretty much everything that you need to know. That will inshallah protect you, and I hope you understand now why the Prophet ﷺ said, don't go to Ruqyah practitioners. Okay, this is why. Just be very careful with what you do. Be very careful with who you trust with your spiritual issues. And please take the signs seriously. Okay, I had someone the other day tell me that they went to a Ruqyah practitioner who gave them something written on a piece of paper, and the raqi told them to put it under their pillow, and as long as they keep it under their pillow, they'll always be protected. And when she opened it to show me, there were Arabic words written back to front, and some of them were names of jinn. So, they ask you to keep these papers with you in your pocket, under your pillow. They ask you to wear things. People are falling for this because they're ignorant of what's happening. So I wanted to record this podcast today for you to gain a comprehensive understanding of where it all comes from, why it's haram, why it's forbidden to go to these people. And inshallah, you will have the motivation and be inspired to do your own ruqyah and follow the steps that we have been given by the Prophet ﷺ to expel any jinn and spiritual problems that have latched onto us because we have been careless with following the sunnah and what Allah advised us to do properly. And if you have had black magic done on you and it's something that you've eaten or drank, then I advise you to get a bottle of water and read your adkhar into the water. Okay, blow the adkhar in the water and sip from that water all day. You might throw up, you might sweat a lot, you may go to the toilet a lot. This is good. It's expelling all the toxins and bad energy from your body. Some people get really sick after doing this, but it's because your body is expelling a jinn, and it's usually a very uncomfortable experience. Okay, so do that, especially if you know that it's from something you've eaten. And do it with the intention that this water will cure you, because you are doing it with the power of Allah and from having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, make your own ruqyah water. You don't need to go to a raqi, for him to make ruqyah water for you. Do it yourself, because it comes from your own trust. It comes from your own tawakkul in Allah, which makes it more powerful. So do that every day for 7 days until the symptoms disappear and you no longer feel sick. You might even get headaches after drinking the water. So just keep going. You might get put off. The jinn will give you horrible symptoms to stop you from doing this. But if you do get these bad symptoms, continue with it until they disappear. Because if you get put off the whole process, then the jinn wins. Okay, you've got to put yourself through quite an uncomfortable process in order to eliminate all the toxins. It has to get worse before it gets better, basically. So perhaps choose a time when you know you're going to be at home to do this. If you're going to work every day, you've got a 9-to-5 job, it might be difficult. So start it over the weekend and see how you get on, inshallah. Okay, I've put a link below to a PDF of the adkhar if you don't know what they are. Read them every morning and every evening, And if you can't, then at least read Al-Fatiha, Ayat al-Kursi, and Surah Al-Ikhlas, Al-Falaq, and Nas every day. Just read that every single day with full conviction that they're going to protect you from every evil out there in our world and in the unseen world. And try and make time at least once a week to go through the whole PDF, because it's actually a really enjoyable experience to just sit in silence and read everything in the PDF. Okay, it's wonderful, especially when you incorporate the 99 names of Allah in your adkhar. So I know not everyone has the time to do it in the morning before work, so at least maybe dedicate some time on Fridays to do it or on the weekends. And before I end this podcast, I just want to answer 2 questions that I received from people who commented before in the YouTube channel. And the first one is how to know if someone has been afflicted by black magic. So the easiest way to know is if their character changes suddenly. And if they suddenly fall very sick with something very serious, or they start having marriage problems when they were absolutely fine before, it's a sudden turn of events. If you see people who suddenly change in their behavior and it's very erratic, or they suddenly become very aggressive and rude and narcissistic when they were wonderful, empathic people before, if you see that, they're really struggling to leave the house, they've got extreme OCD, they've got fears of things they never had before, then offer to read on them. Okay, or just go and read on them. Especially if you know you're empathic, you will help them a lot. A lot of people say, well, do people who have NPD have black magic? Yes, a lot of them do, but narcissistic personality sort of develops from childhood. So when you see someone as an adult act aggressively or abusively, then it's something that's not a shock because they've been like that since they were young, and it just got worse with time. Whereas someone who's got black magic will suddenly switch. So they would have been fine from childhood or fine from, teenage years, and then all of a sudden they become aggressive when they were very peaceful and calm before. So that's how you know. It's a sudden turn of events and things just go terribly wrong for them. And it's not always black magic. Sometimes it's very strong hasad, like very strong envy from someone. And either way, the Ruqyah will help them. So treat it as a sadaqah if you see someone suffering, to just go and read on them. Okay? And the second question is, what happens to your qareen after you die? So scholars differed on this. Some say that the qareen assigned to you sits by your grave until the Day of Judgment, awaiting their account with you. And that's why graveyards at night are very creepy, and it's best to avoid visiting them after Maghrib. If a person has passed away as a believer, it is said that the qareen will sit and cry until the Day of Judgment. And if the person passed away as a disbeliever or someone who didn't repent for all their wrongdoing, the qareen will sit and clap in joy until the Day of Judgment because they fulfilled their mission for Iblis. Okay? Now, other scholars say that the qareen is freed by your death and they go to work on other satanic missions. So, for example, they go to work with magicians and people who claim to communicate with the dead. So they do not become the qareen of another person because they have only been assigned to be your qareen. So they have to go on to do something else. And more often than not, what they do is they go and partner with magicians and soothsayers. So the qareen of the deceased person can be summoned by people who work with evil spirits and magic, and they will appear to look exactly the same as them and the same voice as well. Okay, I'll repeat that again. Your qareen knows you more than anyone else. So after your death, they can impersonate you. They can appear to look like you physically, and they can also talk like you and sound like you. And these are the ghosts that people see of the dead. Okay? So for example, you go to Hampton Court and people say, oh, I saw the ghost of Henry VIII walking around. That wasn't the ghost of Henry VIII, that was his qareen. Okay, the qareen comes back to mess with your head. Some people say, I saw the ghost of my grandmother or my grandfather, or my child who died. These are not the spirits of the dead. These are their qareens who are impersonating them to make it look like they've come back to the dunya to communicate with the living. So your qareen knows everything about you. So when people go to the people who claim to communicate with the dead, they believe they really have communicated with a loved one, when this is false. It's just your qareen impersonating you to do more of Iblis's work to misguide people. So Islam teaches us that we cannot communicate with a deceased person unless they appear in our dreams. So seeing ghosts and going to mediums and magicians who claim to have, summoned them will cause doubts in Islamic teachings and lead people to disbelief. And this will fuel an addiction in them to keep going to magicians and mediums. So this becomes like a fraudulent and highly profitable money-making scheme for evil people who prey on people's ignorance and vulnerability. So for example, if someone is grieving over the death of a loved one and they find comfort in speaking to them on the other side, when in fact they're not, then they will have an addiction to going to mediums. And the medium is actually speaking to the qareen of the deceased person rather than the actual soul or the nafs of the person who has passed away, because this is ilm al-ghayb. These people have now passed into another realm that is unknown to us. We are completely disconnected from it unless we go there in our dreams. So mediums, they act as intermediaries between the earth and the barzakh. Okay, so the barzakh is where the nafs of the dead go to wait for their accounting before the Day of Judgment. And what happens with mediums is sometimes the qareen of the deceased person who is summoned can possess the body of the medium and they start talking to you. So for example, you want to speak to your deceased grandmother, the qareen will possess this medium and they will start speaking to you as if they are the grandmother. And it will be the same behavior, the same accent, the same language, and you will believe that you really are speaking to the spirit of your grandmother because the qareen has taken over the body of the medium. If they don't do that, it will be in writing or drawing, and sometimes you will be able to see the medium go into a trance and then they will describe to you what your grandmother is like. And they'll say, for example, does your grandmother, have this accent? Does she look like this? Does she have blue eyes? Was she blonde when she was younger? And you'll be like, yes, that's definitely her. Did she die in a car accident? Yep, that's her. And she knows all of this, or he knows all of this, because the qareen has been summoned of your grandmother. So they will relay information to you that only you would know about her, you see? So it messes with your head. You think that you're really speaking to your grandmother, but you're speaking to an evil jinn. And this is what makes you pay every single week to go and speak to the qareen. And you're thinking, wow, I've got access to speaking to my grandmother. I can find out what's going on up there. I can, speak to her like she's still alive. These mediums make a lot of money because of this, and they're scamming everybody because they know that these are not the spirits of the dead. They know that they're dealing with evil jinn. And the more amateur ones actually believe that they are communicating with the dead because they have no clue that, evil jinns exist. So when they are trained to be mediums, they really do believe that they have channeled a way to get into the barzakh and receive information that you need from the deceased. And they will defend what they do to the bitter end. They'll say, nope, this is not evil spirits. This is definitely the souls of the deceased, because they really do believe that. But the ones who train them know that they're dealing with evil jinn. And the reason for that is because the ones who train them know that they owe the jinn. So if you're dealing with a medium who has just entered this field of work, they still haven't experienced the wrath of the jinn who have come to collect their debts from them. Okay, they're giving them all these superpowers and making people think that they have this incredible ability to tap into the world of the dead when they don't. So you owe the jinn for this. Okay, it's not for free, it'll come at a cost. The qareen will also mess with other qareens of loved ones to make them forget about you and to make them forget to do, any sadaqah for you or to make dua for you. That's why so many people forget the dead after a period of time. And smear campaigns can also be launched after someone's death. So, for example, some major sins can be revealed about someone, and this is done via the work of the qareen. So the qareen wants other people's qareens to start talking about the major sins of this person. So, for example, I had a haram relationship with that guy, and it causes people to no longer see that person as a pious person who is worthy of their dua. So sometimes a lot of bad news and secrets come out after someone's death, and this is the work of the evil shayateen. And you see this happen with a lot of celebrities. So after they die, loads of women start to claim that they were raped by this person. Why are you doing it now? When he died in a state where people loved him, why are you now claiming that he raped you and sexually harassed you and did this to you and did that to you? It's because they want to ruin the reputation of this person, so he's not remembered as someone good. And, always remember that the qareen, as a jinn with free will, has a choice to make after you die. So they can either redeem themselves by doing good, or they will continue being a soldier of Iblis and partnering with mediums and magicians and psychopaths and so on to continue their mission. So, at the end of the day, we are creatures of free will. And there are qareens who are affected by the death of a believer. And they do repent and they redeem themselves by protecting good people from the bad jinn. Because that's the best thing they can do in the world of the unseen. So not every qareen will be resurrected on the Day of Judgment as a disbeliever and as an evil creature. Many of them will be resurrected as believers if they decide to repent. And the ones who repent would have been inspired by the way you lived your life and by the strength you had over them and by your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is da'wah for them. It's something that makes them reflect on their own existence because they have the free will to choose the right path to follow instead of be among the cursed. So after they are freed from their mission with you, they are given a choice as to whether they want to continue being a soldier of Iblis or if they wish to repent and redeem themselves. And we know that the faith of the jinn can be affected by humans because so many jinns converted. In the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to listen to da'wah and lectures and Islamic talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many of the jinn actually converted and repented after being in the presence of the Sahaba and the Khulafa and prophets who taught them about their existence and about Iblis and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they love to hear knowledge too. So out of mercy for the evil jinn, especially our qareens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them a much longer life than us so that they have time to repent and change their ways. And you might find on the Day of Judgment that you have a mountain of reward because your qareen decided to repent and become a believer after your death because it was inspired by you. You never know, and it's another reason to work on yourself and elevate your nafs for the benefit of, spirits in the unseen world as well. Because the more you elevate your nafs, the less you enable their bad work and motives. Because you're stopping them from practicing their evil ways in your life. So you're helping them as well to get better, the same way you help narcissists when you don't enable them. So when you put up boundaries with your abusers and problematic individuals, you stop them from abusing you. It's the same with the jinn. You have to have strong enough spiritual boundaries so that they can't harm you, and this stops them from accumulating sins in the process. So on the Day of Judgment, you may find that they are grateful to you for that. So I'll end it here. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you found it helpful and beneficial. And I pray that inshallah it's given answers for those who have been seeking them for a long time. Thank you for listening until now if you're still with me. Please do share the podcast with others whom you feel could benefit from this. And do click on that thumbs up if you like the podcast. It really helps the podcast to be shown in search results when people search for information about Ruqyah in Islam and so on. If you have questions, you can post them below in the comment section, and you can reach out to me for one-to-one counselling and coaching if you need it. Please do remember me in your dua. And until the next podcast, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.